on today's episode of The Mythic Masculine.
I see a lot, if you have the absent father, you're more likely to have the devouring mother. And I see a lot of guys who are don't know how to show up in their masculinity, feel shame about their masculinity, so maybe overcompensate and act out. And I think that you're seeing that with the red pill movement, which is there's some value and utility in the things that they say. They're talking about evolutionary psychology and all of that. But underneath it, there's this current of resentment and anger and bitterness towards women that to me taints it. And then, of course, men have a lot of shame about their emotions, about their fear, about their sadness, about their pain, about their longing, about their sexuality, about their needs. And they don't know how to express it. They've never been shown.
What does it mean to be a man? And what kind of masculinity is needed to meet these uncertain times? In an era defined by polarized conflict and existential threat, how can we draw upon the rich lineage of mythopoetics to navigate this terrain? I'm your host, Ian McKenzie, and together with an array of guests, we'll explore various pathways to realign masculinity with thriving life. Greetings, dear listener. I'm your host, Ian McKenzie. My guest today is David Sutcliffe, a somatic psychotherapist and former actor who has stepped off the red carpets of Hollywood to venture into the deeper landscapes of the masculine soul. David is something of an enigma to me. He's a therapist who champions the necessity of men getting in touch with their feelings and expressing their rage and grief. Yet, he is also an ardent Trump supporter and has interviewed uber-masculine figures like Andrew Tate. In our conversation today, we certainly don't align on everything, but we remain willing to lean in and see what the friction reveals. A little more about David. For years, he was an archetypal cute guy or bad boyfriend on television. But behind the scenes, he eventually found himself on his own road of ashes, where the trappings of fame and success turned to dust, inviting him into a more rigorous descent. Together, we explore the cost of the nice guy mask and the disorientation of a fatherless upbringing. We speak of the devouring mother, the search for authentic masculine role models, and his own views on masculine leadership and traditional gender roles. And finally, David reminds us that maturity demands the courage to face our darkness, tame the flames of our inner dragon, and take up the seat of our own sovereignty. Before we begin, I invite you to visit themythicmasculine.com to explore my latest offerings and join the community of supporters on Substack. This podcast remains a labor of love. I've never accepted advertising, and I rely on listeners like you to keep the hearth burning. If these conversations offer you insight or solace, please consider upgrading your membership. And for men ready to commit to their own journey of descent, the next cohort of the Deep Masculine, my 12-week online intensive, begins May 3rd. For those who wish to step into the alchemical cauldron in person, our ritual weekend, Awakening the Wild Erotic, takes place April 24th to 26th on Vancouver Island. You can find full details and registration at themythicmasculine.com and check out the links in the show notes. Now, enjoy my conversation with David Sutcliffe. Welcome, David, to the show.
Happy to be here.
I love to start my interviews by asking a little of where my guest is in this moment, geographically, spiritually, emotionally, whatever attunes the listener to right now.
Well, geographically, I am in Valle de Bravo, Mexico, which is a mountain town about 2.5 hours west of Mexico City. It's a beautiful place, and I moved here with my wife about a year ago, and we love it. And spiritually, I feel like I'm in a great place. I think my relationship with God is better and deeper than ever. In fact, as I get older, it really becomes the more and more the center point of my life, my spiritual practice and my relationship with God. So that feels really good. And my wife is very aligned with me there, which is very nice. I mean, she has her own practice, but we share in that together, which feels really good. And then I just launched a new training, men's training, relationship training. And that's really exciting. Just a place where I can channel my energy and teach all the things that I'm excited about teaching. And yeah, just built a funnel, my first funnel, and made a webinar. And, it's a whole thing. I've never done it that way before. So it's kind of fun to really approach it like a business. And I'm learning a lot about business and how it works. So yeah, it's all, I'm in a good place right now in all regards in my life.
Well, this conversation, Phil, was seeded when I saw you interview Andrew Tate about a year or so ago. This is the second Andrew Tate interview, and those listeners probably have heard the name as sort of an uber masculine figure. And that was intriguing enough. I didn't see the full interview, but I just noticed, maybe like other folks noticed you as well, that Tate was open to being interviewed by a therapist. And so I started tracking your work a little bit, and it wasn't until I interviewed Aubrey Marcus, also a somewhat colorful character, that you'd reached out after, I guess you saw it somehow as well through your channels, and you said, hey man, something like, nice job. There was some degree of like seeing the bit of a tightrope walk it is to interview these kind of folks that have particular, notoriety, but also defense mechanisms. And, there's a sensitivity to the art of the interview. And so I felt, some degree of appreciation. So, that was good to feel. And I reached out, we chatted, and we thought, hey, maybe we should have our own interview to discuss where we align, where we might not in this realm of men's work and mythopoetics, emotional mastery, all these kind of things. So here we are.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, your interview with Aubrey was great. He'd just come off that notorious podcast, and everybody was, commenting on it, and there was an uproar, and he didn't do a lot of interviews really, and I thought you did a good job with him, and to get to the heart of it, to push, you just pushed as much as you could push, and I thought you got a lot from him. So I was impressed with that.
Well, you have an interesting journey through growing up in Canada, in Saskatoon, I understand, as also a fellow Canadian here. I've grown up largely in Vancouver Island. And you then made your way to, I think it was Grimsby, was it Ontario, as well? And then St. Catharines, which I believe is a university town or college town,
Rock,
is that right?
Rock University.
Yeah, and then from there, somewhere found your way into acting, and actually had a fairly significant career in acting. And I confess, I have never seen the Gilmore Girls, but I've certainly heard of it. And that seems to be one of the strongest association, the roles that you've carried. But I'd love to hear a little bit of how you went from, small town Saskatoon to the realm of acting in Hollywood, and what that journey was like for you.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was born in Saskatoon, and we moved to the Niagara region, Grimsby, St. Catharines, when I was pretty young. So I actually grew up there in Southern Ontario, just about an hour and a half south of Toronto. And then I was a jock growing up, typical Canadian. I played a lot of hockey and then, baseball and soccer in the summer. And that was sort of my orientation, how I saw myself. And it's kind of kept me sane going through high school. And then I went to the University of Toronto. I was a varsity basketball player, but my second year I got injured, and I was living with a guy who had just won a playwriting contest. And so I had all this free time, and I said, hey, I'd love to help you out, because I was always curious about theater. And when I was in high school, I was very good at reading out loud. So the teachers would ask me to audition for the play, but I was a jock, so I couldn't, marry that world. I mean, it was just a time thing, but I was always curious about it. So he just asked me to audition. I did, fell in love with it. I got a lot of positive feedback, and just kept doing it. And there was really nothing else that I wanted to do. And so I just kept doing that in Toronto, and eventually made my way to LA and had some good fortune. And a very interesting 20 years of, trying to make it, and meeting lots of interesting people, doing lots of interesting shows. And yeah, it was quite a powerful experience. And then, I always was interested in therapy. I started going in my mid-20s, tried a lot of different modalities. And in my early 30s, I started to realize like there was something going on, some pattern that I was running that I couldn't get out of. And it really concerned me. And I really wanted to get to the bottom of it. And I discovered this type of therapy called core energetics, a somatic psychotherapy. And it used different physical techniques like hitting, punching, kicking to help you access these repressed emotions and feel them, express them. And suddenly I was sobbing and crying and raging and having these intense experiences. And it was beautiful and terrifying and illuminating. And I ended up going eventually to a week-long workshop with a woman named Ann Bradney up at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California. And she had a way of working that I was just fascinated with. And I had an incredible experience up there, just, for my own transformation, but what I witnessed. And there was just something about what she did that I found real and authentic and creative. And I just had this impulse. It's like, okay, I want to be able to do what she does. I want to know what she knows. I don't know where that came from. But at the time, I was really at the height of my career. I was 35 years old. I had a television show. I had a couple movies. I had a movie star girlfriend. I mean, it was, typical. I had it all.
Living the life.
But I just, this work kind of took over my life. And over time, I went to her training program, did her 4-year training program, and then did a year grad school, I guess they call it, the 5th year they call it in New York. And then this is where I'm at now. Eventually I retired from acting in my late 40s and I've been doing this, I've been doing this since 2011, but really full time for the last maybe 10 years.
Mm. And so you said about 35 was the height of the career in acting, and also a kind of peak. It's where, you had movies, you had a house, the girlfriend, but I understand she either dumped you or left, and you had some movies collapse or something, and it really felt like a dark night of the soul kind of kicked in around that time, which is a mythical number, because I believe it's in Iron John with Robert Bly's book. Of course, he talks about usually it's around that time, around mid-30s, that men are often invited to walk the road of ashes, right, where the best intent and dreams and all the rest, kind of turn to ash as they do, and it kind of, there's a specific task necessary around that time, which is not to run away from it, not to suppress it, but to sort of embrace that time. And I wonder for you, what was it that you had to reconcile, I suppose, with that sort of fall from a certain, sheen of success?
Well, I certainly had a creative intent. Like I loved acting and I was good at it. And there was something really fun about, being in a scene with other people and creating things together on the fly, and then it's on TV and all of that. There's a lot of creative juice in it. But there was another part of me that was really, I just wanted to be seen. I didn't understand that. And that was really the motivating force. I didn't feel seen as a child growing up. My parents split when I was 6 years old. My dad wasn't really around. My mom was very loving and supportive, but a little, let's say, devouring. And I had to sort of abandon my own needs and take care of hers, a typical story. And I realized, I got everything that I wanted. I had all this attention and I had money. I had a house and success and all the trappings. But I was miserable. I didn't feel fulfilled internally. Even though like I was reasonably satisfied with the work that I was doing, there was just something about the environment that felt false. And I felt false ultimately. I didn't feel like I was really, truly being myself, pursuing things that my full heart wasn't in it. And of course, you feel like an outsider. You feel like a fraud to a certain degree. And so I really went on the journey to kind of find my authentic self. Like, what do I actually think? What do I actually feel? What do I actually want underneath all of this? Because I was a charming, good-looking guy. I was a natural to be on TV, right? And I got that from the time I was a little kid. Like, as long as I could remember, it's like, oh my God, you're the cutest little kid. You're the cutest little kid. So I would get all this attention all the time from women, and then just turned that into my career, essentially. But that's what I was living for. That's what was defining me. And what was actually going on inside me. And I didn't really have any masculine male role models. I wasn't thinking of it at the time that it really had to do with masculinity. But looking back on it now, I think that really was what it was about. I was searching for, like, how do I be a man in the world? a real man, because I thought, actors it's kind of gay, like the macho part of me is just like, I wear makeup at work. That's my job. And somebody combs my hair. Like there was something like a little bit emasculating about it. And particularly because I was working on women's shows. I was like the dude on women's shows. It wasn't like I was the lead renegade cop or something that was cool or tough. I was the guy, the cute guy, or the bad boyfriend, or the bad dad, but attractive, charming, all of that. And and then I got onto the Hallmark movies, and it was emasculating. And I finally just rebelled against it.
And so what is a masculinity then? You said you didn't really have role models growing up, but were there roles that you were attracted to or wanted or saw, that seemed to emulate a kind of, I don't know, authentic masculinity, that maybe you didn't get to try out but wanted to?
Well, I did end up doing a cop show in Toronto after Gilmore Girls. I got offered this role, cop lead on a CBC show. And so I got to play that out a little bit. And that was a lot of fun and an opportunity for me to explore that side of me. I mean, I was an athlete and in LA, it was always interesting because I was on a hockey team. It was a cop team, the LA Bullets. Everybody on my team was a LA County sheriffs. And they were always shocked that I was on these, shows, like these kind of romantic comedy shows, because they would experience, I was a kid from Canada, and I played hockey like a lot of Canadian kids, like an animal. Now, unconsciously, I didn't realize I was playing to win, the love of my father. That's what it was all about. But it was a very motivating force. And so there was a lot, I have a lot of natural aggression and a lot of masculinity, and I don't have any shame about that. Like I never had shame about my aggression or my ambition or the part of me that wants to like conquer. It's competitive. Like I've never had shame about that. But for whatever reason, I wasn't really able to bring that to my acting. And it did. But I guess there was also I don't know. The truth is I was dominated. I don't even like to say it now, but at the time I was really dominated by women. And I didn't know it. I was a classic nice guy. You wouldn't think that initially, but that was the truth. I would abandon myself for them, seeking their approval. And yeah, I mean, that's really the thing that ultimately kind of took me down. And I didn't even know what it meant to be a man. I didn't know what it meant to have masculine authority. And I didn't really take responsibility for it. And also the times, it's like, it's a different time we lived in. I grew up, at the height of feminism, and don't open my car door. Men and women are the same. We don't want to be provided for, like all of that. So I also was left with, okay, like I don't know. I didn't grow up with traditional masculinity, and I found it very confusing. Like I didn't quite know how to relate to men. So I related to them very often like I would, or how to relate to women. So I'd very often relate to them the way that I would with men, which obviously, as every guy knows, doesn't go over very well.
Mm. So, and somewhere in there, you also had a Kickstarter, I understand, to do a film or a documentary series on a group. And I understand this is was this along the way of you learning the skill set, or were you facilitating in it, or what was the idea behind creating a film, I believe, following men and women going through some of these deep emotional processes?
So I wanted to make a documentary film. And my ambition initially when I got into acting was really to use it as a vehicle to get into directing and producing. And that got sidetracked with this, new interest. But at the time when I first got involved in the work, I was still in LA and still working and very, very much identified with it. And I found these workshops fascinating, and I just thought there was a story there. So I had a little bit of money because I was working, and I produced and directed this 11-part series, documentary series about a 1-week, group therapy retreat, radical liveness, core energetics retreat with this woman, Ann Bradney. And it was, I hadn't really done much filmmaking before. I mean, I'd done filmmaking as an actor, but I hadn't really shot or created anything. And we did a couple of test weekends, and I edited some stuff together, and it came out really good. And I I knew how to do it, but putting it all together, editing, that was a whole different thing. It took me 5 years to finish it. And it was just a lot of footage and interviews, and it almost killed me. But now I'm very, very proud of it. It's called Group documentary series. You can find it online. It's on Vimeo, and it's fantastic. It's really powerful and unique and raw and original. I mean, there's nothing else out there like it. And so, it's just, it was something to do to sort of satisfy myself creatively. I mean, just put my head down for 5 years and finish this thing.
So my background as well is in documentary filmmaking. It's about 20 years I've been doing it. And the latest film I did about the community of Portugal, or community of Tamara in Portugal, took 10 years. Which before that, the record for me was about 4.5. And so, I know what it's like to be in an edit room for days and weeks and months, sifting through footage, trying to find the exact right shots and stuff. It's quite a thing. It's quite a devotional act, I think.
Yes.
So I have empathy. For you there. What did you discover then in the experience itself? Because it was a mixed gender group, I understand. Mm-hmm. And so was there patterns that emerged amongst men and women, like ways that they've been wounded by each other or needed to kind of speak truths to each other? Or what kind of insights came from holding a container like that?
It's really interesting you bring that up, because in Anne's groups, this woman, Anne Bradney, and I did a lot, I participated in a lot of her groups. I mean, I did a 4-year training program with her, weekends, week-long retreats. And very rarely would we get into gender politics, And I think because it was so contentious. Because when we would go there, the level of rage that would come out, because Anne really creates a container that welcomes all of the feelings, and the intensity of what would come out when men and women squared off was, I think, too much for a lot of people. And I mean, that's where they really would let themselves unleash their rage. And I think what would happen for the men is they would hesitate. They would hold back. They didn't feel comfortable or confident enough to, say what they thought, say what they felt, bring out their rage towards women. I mean, it's obviously it exists. But what did happen in the documentary series that was interesting was near the end, I think the 5th day, a men's group sort of spontaneously broke out, and it ended up being this very, very powerful process. And, typical, it's all about the father, the absent father, and these young men feeling angry and disappointed at the father. I mean, it all was kind of underneath. But and then of course projecting that onto each other, and it was very, very powerful. Maybe the most interesting thing that happened. Obviously, Anne did not facilitate that; the assistant, who was a man, did. And it was in that moment, watching that in real time, where I thought, "Oh, okay, like we need to do some men's work around this." There were people at the time. The only person that I really knew that was doing men's work, this was like 2008, was John Wineland. I was aware of John and obviously David Data. I mean, in terms of this generation, obviously I know previous generations, but there was nothing modern coming out. And so, I just, that was really where the spark of interest started. But I ended up going in all kinds of different directions and doing all different kinds of things. And it really isn't until recently where I decided to come back and focus on men full time.
And so as you begin working with men, as you've been working with men, what do you notice are the patterns that show up in the ways that men are struggling, the challenges they maybe know they have, and maybe the ones they don't know they have, but they're just confused or in pain or lost? And what do you feel are the sort of pathways that seems to invite, insight, healing, integration, and the ways that men actually want to be showing up?
Well, I think underneath it all is, this is true for men and women, it's just shame. I think men are just carrying a lot of shame. Why? I mean, I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. But as I said earlier, and I can relate it to my own experience, I think a lot of men just don't know how to show up in the world right now. It's a very confusing time. Maybe it's getting clearer now, but it has been confusing for a long time because of the changing dynamics in gender roles. And so there's been a lot of messages that I think men have received, which is essentially stand down. Like, make yourself small for women, give them space. You've been oppressing them. And then particularly white men you've also been oppressing non-white people. And so I think there's a lot of men have kind of stepped back, retreated into themselves on that level. And I think, what I see is just men that didn't have strong fathers, fathers that weren't present either emotionally or physically. They were too oriented to the mother. I mean, that's what I see in the culture right now is a lot of, it's like the devouring mother. We talk a lot about the tyrannical father. But I see a lot, if you have the absent father, you're more likely to have the devouring mother. And so I see a lot of guys who are don't know how to show up in their masculinity, feel shame about their masculinity, so maybe overcompensate and act out. And I think that you're seeing that with the red pill movement, which is there's some value and utility in the things that they say. They're talking about evolutionary psychology and all of that. But underneath it, there's this current of resentment and anger and bitterness towards women that to me taints it. And then, of course, men have a lot of shame about their emotions, about their fear, about their sadness, about their pain, about their longing, about their sexuality, about their needs. And they don't know how to express it. They've never been shown. And so there's so many mixed messages in the culture right now. People come at, women saying things, men saying things about what is it to be a man? I mean, you can go on Twitter any day or scroll Instagram and you're going to get so many different messages about what it means to be a man and how to show up. And so, I'm trying to play my part in that. I have my own take on it. But I think it's fine because the people that, need what you've got will find you, and the people who need what I've got will find me. And I don't think there's one archetype. We don't all have to be the same. And I think we're figuring it out. But there's something feels like it's shifting. I feel optimistic, but there's still a lot of vitriol is still out there, and a lot of anger, a lot of controversy. I mean, just look at the relationship. The kids, they're not having sex. They're not dating. They're not getting married. Stat,
you mean?
Yeah. That can't be good. I mean, it means something.
Let me ask you this. Yeah.
I don't know what it means, but it means something. I mean, they're not getting together. There's something going on that just feels sad to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this then, because I have my own sort of line I draw between the relationship between feminism and the manosphere. For example, of how feminism, which again, even to talk about feminism is a bit of a, because there's feminisms, plural, right? Of course, there's lots of different strands within it, but that there is a kind of counterpoint or reaction that's happened that is sort of coalesced as the manosphere. So I'd be curious for you just to draw your own interpretations of that. Like, how is one sort of leading to a reaction from the other between men and women and between the culture? Because my understanding for feminism initially arose specifically to deal with women's oppression and particularly violence against women and equality in certain ways. But at the same time, it has sort of generated a certain degree of complexity and confusion as well for men. And some feminists would say, well, it's just men needing to, again, back off to, take up less space. But at the same time, there's a different consequence by not having men participating meaningfully, right, within either relationships or with culture. So again, I'd just be curious to hear your take of these relationships between these polarities or these movements.
Well, I think that what eventually happened to feminism was like almost every social movement or any movement in general, it always goes too far, and it always becomes co-opted by the radicals and their voices, and it's a place where they can play out their resentment and anger and desire for revenge and punishment. And that, I think, definitely happened with feminism. I mean, I'm not saying this is what feminism is, but there was an aspect of it to me that very much, it was man-hating. I mean, it was vitriolic, and guys could feel it. And then if you'd name it, there would be a lot of pushback. And that's not to paint the whole movement that way, but that did exist. And I think that, there was a lot of rationalization that, why are women making less money? Like that trope that was propagated, the gender pay gap. But when you really look at it, it's not exactly as it seems. Women work less hours, they work different jobs. And when you put the man and woman doing the exact same job, doing the exact same working hours at the same company, it's a negligible difference. 0.5% is what I heard. And so men could feel like that there was a lie being perpetrated, and they didn't like it. And I think they just kind of had enough at a certain point. And they felt unappreciated. We don't need men. The End of Men. That was a book that came out. I mean, that's what I heard in the culture. It's like, we don't need men. Fuck you. You're useless. Every TV show was the woman was the sensible one and the dad was bumbling. I mean, don't tell me that, like, we got propagated with that nonstop. That's fucking real. Okay. There was like something going on. That's not my imagination. Right. But although they would have you believe that, and I think that was part of the problem. It's like, you want me to recognize your experience, but you don't want to recognize my experience. I have something going on over here. I have something to say. And I don't think that they exactly knew how to say it. And so, the red pill community, the Manosphere, emerged, and the lie, underneath it all is really like, we need each other. Like, we can't exist without each other, and that's a hard thing to come to terms with. I mean, I had to come to terms with that because relationships are difficult, and from a man's perspective, women are difficult, and from a woman's perspective, men are difficult. They're hard to understand. They don't think like us, and they have different wants and needs and hormones and brain activity. It's a whole different thing going on. And for generations, we've figured it out, but something had to change. And I think we're still kind of figuring out how we relate to each other. And I think there's a lot of hurt feelings underneath it all, both ways. And I think right now what we're doing is struggling to see each other, really see the other, and have compassion and understanding, and vulnerability. And, and I see that exists in lots of places, but unfortunately, there's also still a lot of bitterness and vitriol, and maybe I'm just have a selection bias because I pay attention to it and it comes up on my algorithm. But it's just disturbing to me how angry both sides are at each other.
You bring up a sort of fundamental position, I think, which is that men and women are different. Right? Like,
it's like a controversial statement.
Yes, which is fascinating to realize, right? How that statement alone can obviously generate a lot of opposition, right? Pushback, depending on the scene that you're speaking to.
Yeah.
But I'll say for me as well, this is where I've landed. I do believe that there is a difference, and I think that the ability to grant that as a foundation of like mutual respect and appreciation for that difference versus being in opposition or critical or judgmental about the difference, right? Like those are two different ways you can, quote,
of course,
recognize difference.
But isn't that self-evident? I've never understood that, whether it's, I saw this person online said, race doesn't exist. And, a black kid is like, it's a black woman talking to a black kid. He's like, I'm black. What do you mean? Like the guy over there looks different. Of course it exists.
Yeah.
And I don't even understand the argument, whether it's gender or race. It's like, we're different and we can appreciate each other's differences. What's the problem? I don't get it. I think the problem is, as soon as you have inequality, and then you say, well, people are different, and that's the explanation for inequality. People don't like that explanation, so they want to pretend that everybody's the same, so they can point to discrimination and say that's why everybody's not paid the same or whatever it is, But that to me is what happened with the gender debate, and it's to be honest with you, I feel it's really a dark rationalization. It's kind of evil to lie about something that we obviously know is true, that men and women are different. And that's the beauty of it, the masculine and the feminine. It's like, it's done a lot of damage, to be honest. I think that I understand on one level I'm sure somebody would push back and say, well, this is why, but I think this is why you see the trad family thing come back into favor, and women like my wife, she doesn't want to work. I was just like, I don't want you to work. And it was like 2 years of her like, what? Huh? Like, she didn't get it. And I was like, no, I want to provide for you. And she's very, very busy. Like, it's not that she doesn't work, but I didn't want her to have to worry about money. I wanted to create that classic masculine feminine polarity, and both of us had to come up against our shame about the fact that we wanted that, and we finally settled on that. It just feels great, and we're in a classic relationship where I pay the bills and she cooks dinner and makes the bed, and it's like, I never thought I would have that, and I really like it, and I don't feel any sense of, I don't know, we're not equal. I don't know. I never got that. I never saw women as less than me. I just saw them as different and equal.
Mm. Well, so granting for a second that, there is other folks that, again, have fluidity with gender. And, I have lots of conversation around this. And so we don't have to go there. And at the same time, for folks that want that arrangement, like you just said, some of the pushback I've heard against feminists who will say, all women should want to, achieve and, work, fulfilling careers. And there's this kind of like shame of being a, quote, stay-at-home mom or something, right? And so I think certain women who also want that arrangement have maybe felt like they couldn't have it because been sort of seen as lesser, right? But then again, that also requires a kind of diversity of opportunity of, say, if there are women who do want to achieve and have a strong creative life in the workforce, that they can still, right? Sure. I think that's also important, but that they're not also compared to quote, more traditional roles. That being said, now you do have a certain frameworks you offer around how to navigate relationship between men and women, in particular, the idea of masculine leadership. And so I'd be curious if you could, offer a little bit of, based on that understanding then of that kind of polarized way, relationship, what are aspects of masculine leadership that you have discovered that, growing up you didn't know or wasn't modeled for you, but now you see as supportive to a healthy relating?
Well, the analogy I use is really like ballroom dancing. And generally, the man leads. And what does that look like? Well, he creates the frame. He stabilizes, right? And he has to be firm in that frame. And then the woman comes into the frame. It's literally how ballroom dancing starts. The man creates the frame, and the woman comes into the frame. And sort of there has to be tension, like she pushes up against, right? And so there has to be give, but it has to be firm. And that tension is what allows him to lead the direction of the dance. And of course, he is leading off of her. So he's not leading separate from her. He's attuning to her. He's with her. He's present with her. And so he's leading. So is he really leading, or are they sort of co-leading and he's just the one essentially steering? You could debate that, but that's how I think about it, that he's sort of steering this dance, and then she gets to relax and be in her sort of femininity while he has the responsibility of guiding this thing around. And they both get what they want there. And it's both, it's satisfying, right? It's kind of like a metaphor for this dancing for kind of a sexuality or the sexual act. And so, I mean, if you just translate that into like everyday life between the man and the woman, it's not that it's 100% completely binary, but in general, I think that a man should initiate, a man should create the container, a man should bring consciousness and presence and create safety. And that is what actually creates emotional safety for the woman. And in that place, the woman can relax into herself. She doesn't have to worry about the container, right? She knows she's held. And then her, sort of feminine gifts can emerge. And maybe that's kind of abstract. I'm sure you've heard that before. People talk about it in all kinds of different ways. What does that mean? What does it look like day to day? It's variable, but it's kind of innate. I mean, just, you tell me, in most couples, the dude drives the car. I mean, it's just what it is. Like, that's never changed. Feminists can talk all they want. I mean, but at the end of the day, when you go to the car, it's like 90% of the time, she doesn't want to drive. And she wants him to drive. And that's just kind of what it is. There's certain things I just think are built in, and that we know that they're built in, and we kind of have to take responsibility for. It's like, when I'm the one who deals with the spiders, if there's some manly thing to be done, I've dated hardcore feminists, man. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it all reverts to traditional gender roles. That's just what it is. And it's beautiful. That's the thing. It's awesome. It's like when you're in it, it's like there's so much sweetness, and it just, something about it feels, I don't know, I feel God in it somehow, and I feel fulfilled in it. I'm not in dominate, I'm in service, right? I mean, the idea that I provide for my wife, in one way you could say, well, she's really vulnerable because if I decide to leave or something happens, she's in this vulnerable place. But the other way you could look at it is, I work for her. Like, I'm out working for her. That's kind of what it is. Yeah. That's how it feels to me, for the family. And you know what? I like it. I like working for her, and because I have responsibilities, and she has responsibilities. And, she's not at home all day, eating. She's got work that she does. She's a very serious person. But the fact that she doesn't have to worry about money, I think just takes a real burden off her. And it's just like, okay, I've got this part of the relationship. You've got this part. It's really a division of labor, essentially. You're good at this. I'm good at that. There's always things that we don't want to do, but it's like, have to do them because this is just what life is. It has nothing to do with gender roles. It's like, it's just what it is. And I don't know. I'm so happy that I came back to that.
So would you call this like a traditional conservative position?
I think so. I think I guess as I get older, they say as you get older, you become more conservative. And that's certainly true of me. I mean, when I was growing up in Canada and in Hollywood, I thought of myself as liberal, and now I really see myself as more conservative. I would use the word conservative. I use the word traditional. I really see the value and utility of tradition, and there's something beautiful in it. And there's a reason that traditions exist. They're grounding. They can be restrictive, certainly, and they have become restrictive. The patriarchy can be overbearing, certainly, and that when it is, there is a pushback. But in general, like, we need structures, we need systems to live in, and like the documentary you made about the community in Portugal. It's also, everybody's going to do what they're going to do. And if people want to like experiment with that and try that out, I think that's beautiful too. But for me, at least, at this point in my life, and I'm sure I'm responding to the times, I feel very much like, God and family. Like I'm sort of in that place, and it feels really, really good.
And so to turn to perhaps a little more controversy, this is a good segue into your Team MAGA support, as you've shared, including Trump for some time, maybe the first even term. And so I'm curious to know, again, how did that shift happen to you, and how do you see the value of leadership in someone like Trump as someone like yourself, who I consider to be very emotionally intelligent and skilled, and therapy and all this kind of stuff. And to me, it strikes me as Trump isn't the kind of guy that is that interested in therapy or any of this kind of stuff. So there's some curiosity in me about how you could see, again, what he brings as important to the stage now. So if you please illuminate that.
Well, I was all about Obama. I was in Hollywood at the time, and he came on the scene, and I thought it was really exciting, and he was really exciting, and he was going to heal the nation, a man who was half black and half white. And I got all into that. And then I got disappointed because I saw that he just eventually, he played the system, which at first I rationalized it. Well, what's he going to do? He's got to work within the system. But as time went on, I just started to see that he was just another politician. I thought he was a good man in general. And, did he do his best? I don't know, maybe. But nothing changed fundamentally. And then when Trump came on the scene, I didn't really take it seriously. I just assumed that Hillary's going to get elected. I didn't really care. But then they started going after him like crazy. And I was just like, that's when I became curious. Like, why are they attacking him? And I would see these headlines that would say, Trump said whatever. And I'd read the headline and be like, what? Jesus. And then I'd go and watch the clip and I'd be like, that's not what he said at all. Like, that's just a lie. Like, it's a lie and a manipulation. And that was sort of my team. And I was watching my team in real time do what I thought the other side had been doing to Obama. And that's when I realized, like, oh, it's all the same. They're all full of shit. This whole thing is corrupt. And they're all after him. So, okay, wait, there's a corrupt system that is now attacking this one guy. That's my guy. That's my guy. He must be the good guy. If they're going after him, he must know something. And the way that he held himself, the humor, I mean, he's hilarious. And I think that's a real test. That's a sign of intelligence. The fact that he can be present and handle all of these questions while still maintaining this sense of lightness, I thought showed a very, very high degree of a kind of, I would say, emotional intelligence. And then I saw Scott Adams talk about him. And that was really when I switched. And Scott Adams, who is a cartoonist, Dilbert, but he's also a writer, a blogger, a political or social commentator. He taught, and I'm sure you know all about this, but
I've read both his books, actually, God's Debris and the I think it's called The Religion War. Those are the two by Scott Adams. Yeah.
Well, he's got a number of books, but he was the first one to say that Trump is basically a wizard, that his persuasion game is next level, and it doesn't matter what you do, you can't beat him. And he's going to change the way that we see reality. And I think that's happened. And I think that if it wasn't for Trump, we wouldn't know how corrupt this system really is. And we see it now with RFK. And I don't know where you're at with that and where the listeners are at. I'm not saying that everything RFK is saying is 100% true. But I'm 100% sure that there's mass corruption in the pharmaceutical industry and that we should know about it. And, we saw it with COVID. And so, it's all kind of unraveling, and none of that would have happened without Trump. So I'm grateful that he's the kind of guy that's willing to stand there and take all of that. I don't think he's a racist. I never understood that. I don't think he's a sexist. I think he's just who he is. I think he's sort of absent of shame in a good way, maybe in a bad way, but also in a good way. I think he just does whatever the fuck he wants, and he says whatever the fuck he wants, and I think he's got an orientation to life that is pushes up against our idealized self-image, like his fixation on ratings, right? It's like, well, your ratings suck. Like, that's the end of the story. Like, well, no, but I'm good. But the truth is that is the end of the story. Like, you do need ratings. You do need views on your YouTube channel to keep going. I mean, I'm not saying that's all of what it is, but that's what we pay attention to. You discover somebody on Instagram and you like a video, you go to their page and the first thing you look at is how many followers do they have? What's their top video? We all do that. And I think he sort of does it out in the open. The things that we keep secret that we don't like to, oh no, but we don't, he just does it all out in the open. And I think that's why he's reviled. I mean, there's other reasons why he's reviled. I understand it. But also the fact that he's caused such cognitive dissonance in people like Sam Harris and others who I think legit have cracked, like that their TDS is a real thing. It's just like, there's something going on. And you could say that he's a psychopath, a narcissist. Narcissists don't have senses of humor like that. It's the same with Tate. Is Tate a narcissist? Yeah, he's got narcissistic qualities, but they can't make fun of themselves. Not true narcissists. So this idea that he's that or some kind of psychopath, I know what that is. It's not that. Like, both of those guys, they're too funny to be true psychopaths. Again, not to say they don't have narcissistic qualities. So, and also just, the last thing I'll say about it is, listen, I think I'm not political parties, like the Republicans are fucking insane. They're just less insane in this moment than the Democrats. That's it.
Well, I mean, that's fascinating for a lot of reasons. And, I can see the kind of avatar quality that Trump has.
Yeah.
Right. Of certain qualities in a similar way that Tate does. Right. Which I think we've touched on in the past, of Tate having this kind of uber masculine, like achiever, dominate at all costs, show no weakness, all these kind of things. He kind of coalesces these qualities and then becomes a kind of avatar for that energy in the culture at large, kind of amplified, especially through things like social media, which is also a kind of recent phenomenon. And then Trump as well as a sort of maestro of social media and image and popularity, kind of, again, coalesces, right, certain energy and certain forces. So it's fascinating to be able to track also from that layer. And again, curiosity of, is this a masculinity to emulate, or is it a kind of low-key character, in the corrupt halls of power that in some ways is actually creating new possibility as well, which seems to be a little bit like what you're saying.
I don't think it's masculinity to be emulated, either Tate or Trump. I think there's qualities that they have that can be emulated. I mean, they're strong men. Like they hold themselves. And the thing that people don't understand about guys like Tate and Trump, like, you want to take that level of negative transference. Do you really think you could stand up to that level of hatred and vitriol coming at you? People want to kill you, literally. Okay, like you can, people go on, they post something on their Instagram and they get 3 negative comments and they're freaking out. Okay, these guys have death threats against them all the time. So there's something like powerful about that. Like, they're able to hold themselves, not take that on, and keep moving forward with their message. I mean, anybody in that kind of position of whether it's a politician or an actor or a musician, the level of transference that they hold, positive or negative, that's why one of the reasons I had a lot of respect for Obama, because I felt he held people's transference very, very well. So, but no, they serve a role, they serve a function. We need these characters once in a while to come along and break things up. And sometimes listen, there's I don't want to get too much into it, but let's just say I talked to a Native American man. I asked him about Trump, and he's really simple. And he's just really simple. Sometimes you need a strong man. You know, like sometimes the chief has to be really nice, and then sometimes the timing is the chief's got to be a hard ass. And that's just what it is. And right now we're at a time that, we need that kind of chief, like a strongman. I don't think you want that all the time. But I think sometimes, I would argue that sometimes things get out of control and we spin into chaos. I think we're there right now. And I think you need a strong man to come in and set shit straight. And I think that's what Trump is attempting to do. People could say he's the generator of the chaos. But
that's what I was going to say.
Well, no, this is the thing. It's so interesting. It's like he creates chaos. It's like, no, the chaos is created by your reaction to him. Like he creates chaos inside you. So all these people on the left who go to therapy, it's like, did you miss that fucking lesson or that session when they said you're responsible for your reaction to somebody else? Like, it's not actually him, it's you. Like, what does Trump bring up inside you that you can't tolerate, that makes you go crazy? Like, there's something going on there, right? And the fact that nobody's actually willing to look at it, I would bring this up and people would just, they would annihilate me. Because it was obvious to me, even in my kind of therapy circles, it was a no-go zone, even though that's the kind of thing we would talk about in every other dynamic. But with Trump, oh, no, that's different. How is it different? How is it different? He is creating chaos inside you. He's putting you into a rage. Why? He's neutral. He's a neutral figure. He should be. Right? If you really want to be in the deepest part of your spirituality and look at the world in that way, he's neutral. You're reacting to him. That's on you. So he's not the generator of the chaos. It's the reaction to him that creates the chaos. That's what I would say. But I get nowhere with that argument, as you can imagine.
Well, I think it's one thing to say, again, this is good because it straddles, again, like the political and the sort of external versus the internal, and the aspects that, we all carry Trumpian qualities.
Right.
That's one way to say it, right? We all carry, Tate qualities. We all carry. So it's like, how do we engage with those qualities within? And of course, those sort of in the political active arena would say, empowering a mass, amount of police force to like snatch people off the street, often wrong, the people that, aren't actually meant to be, or shipping them off or blowing up, everywhere.
Maybe they should open the border for 4 years and just let a bunch of people in. Like, why don't we point at that and say that's incredibly destructive, where they just, without pretended it wasn't happening. That's the thing. Like, Trump is getting all of this heat for doing that, but we don't actually point to the what was essentially lawlessness of opening up the border without any explanation, and to whoever. People were just piling in. You can't have a country like that. And so of course people are going to have feelings about that, and of course cleaning up the mess is going to be messy. And so I find it very, pointing the finger at that they're doing it wrong. I'm like, take accountability for letting all those people in first, and then we can have the fucking conversation. That's how I feel about it. It's like, you let out the criminals and now you're going to fucking rail on how the cops are cleaning it up. I don't know, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. It's a bad look for sure. But there is something going on in these cities where they're not wanting to clean up crime. In Los Angeles, they're just letting people out in the streets. we saw it in this, like, that's a real thing. That's not a fantasy, right?
Yeah.
And I understand why they're doing it. But you have, because it's like, does putting people in prison work? Does it rehabilitate them? Does it make it worse? And why are they out in the streets? It's probably because of poverty, or they grew up in a violent household. I get all that argument. Like, they're traumatized people. People who are career criminals are traumatized people. So does it serve to put them in prison? No, but you can't also just let them roam the street. Like, we've got to find the balance there, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the last thing to say, I think, is that I see in many ways, I think this, so the Trump imprint is based on the conditions that, slid into a certain polarity, right, with the previous, mostly Democratic time as well. So of course, you have the like pendulum swinging hard in the other direction. Yeah. And so in many ways, but to only look at that swing and say, hey, that's the problem. But like, wait a second, actually, all of that momentum was created by the policies and everything that came beforehand.
Yes, absolutely.
And so to see it more holistically, I think is maybe the invitation, rather than demonize, of course, just that side and say,
But it's so much fun to demonize them. That's the problem. It's just it's so much negative pleasure I get out of pointing the finger at them and making them wrong. But you're absolutely right. Just because I've been attacked, so it's like personal to me, because I would try to bring these things up. I would try to talk about it in this way, and I just got annihilated. So I was just like, all right, let's go to war. But you're absolutely right. The pendulum swung to the left because it was a reaction to something too strong on the right. And that's just how it works. I guess that's just what we do. And we're here now. And, I'm voting, I guess, I'm voting Republican, but I don't know. Will I be voting Republican for the rest of my life? I'm going to vote because probably the Republicans will go nuts and they'll be insane, and I'll swing back the other way. The truth is I'm a moderate. I just kind of like look at I'm not ideological at all. I just kind of, gauge with what's happening in the moment and then make my decision from that place. So I'm not, I'm not really attached. I mean, I express my beliefs strongly, but I'm and some, I guess I am attached to. You can't help but identify with your beliefs, but also I try to hold them lightly, right? I try to express them strongly, but hold them lightly and listen to what other people say, because I want to be reasonable. And obviously, in the work that I do, I don't bring this energy to the work that I do. I know how to maintain a place of neutrality and non-judgment and just be with it all. And that's a really interesting place to be. But also I live in the world and I'm online and it's fun to, scream and yell.
Well, how about this? We'll wind it down the conversation with a return, I think, to the personal and to the intimate. And you wrote a piece on your website as I was checking out some poetry piece, I believe, or prose, on how to tame your dragon, I think you called it, or how to tame a dragon, which actually was a beautiful little motif, I think, with you and your partner, and spoke to a kind of moment where there had been a fight, there had been controversy, there was sort of maybe hurt on both sides, but there was a impulse to reconnect. Maybe I'll leave it to you to speak that, but there's just something actually really powerful mythically, I think, around that, around the work, the emotional work, the vulnerability it takes to be in a relationship between a man and a woman, the hurt parts to reopen. And I'd love for you just to speak about maybe the inspiration for the piece, the motif of the piece, and how that really is maybe the heart of what you're inviting men into.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for reading that. I had a fight she was my girlfriend at the time, but now my wife, and we had essentially made up, but once we made up, she wants to come back together physically right away, and I needed a little time. And I wondered why I needed that time, because we were lying in bed and I started to think about it. And she was very graceful and gracious in giving me the space that I needed. But I thought, it's over. We know what it is. Why am I still holding on? And I, went inside, did one of my somatic exercises, kind of like tuned into my body. And I had this very powerful image of a dragon, a red dragon, guarding my heart. And I thought, oh, I have a dragon guarding my heart. That makes sense. Knowing my history and the disappointment that I faced and the heartbreak that I faced as a child, it would make sense to me that I would have this dragon. But I thought, I looked over at her and I said, but that's not my mother. And I'm a man now and I don't need my heart guarded. This is a good woman. And what am I going to do here? And I really thought I'm going to have to figure out how to tame this dragon. But the problem is guarding my heart is the only job that he's ever known. And has a perfect track record. He's very, very good at it. And he's quite proud of his work, So how do you talk that person off of that? And I just thought, well, I got to give him another job. I have to put his focus on creation and building, and that it's time to let these defenses down and open up my heart and be vulnerable and stop defending and start to focus on creating and building. And so I literally in real time had a conversation with him in my mind and could feel, obviously it's a part of me, the hesitancy and the fear and the doubt and, the identification but but slowly, I think I convinced him. I think he still rears his head from time to time. He comes back, but overall, yeah, it took me a long time, but I think we all have a version of that. Maybe it's not a dragon, but I think most of us are protecting our hearts in some way. And I think, maturity and masculinity, I think certainly is, taking that force, that aggression, that dominator, that killer, and put it towards building civilizations, or building a business, or building a house for your family, or whatever it is, creating safety, your kingdom, for your world, as opposed to using it as in service of war or retribution and punishment. So that's kind of what that piece is about for me. And yeah.
And as a metaphor as well for the work of men in their emotional landscape as well, felt apt in the sense, right, of like this protection that a lot of men have, of course, for being, not rewarded typically for being vulnerable or for expressing emotions or allowing that energy to come through them, and relearning again, actually, about how important that is for relationship in particular, right? I think that's the part
right.
where a lot of men feel so lonely and isolated, even when they're, quote, in a relationship, and maybe wonder why. And I think that's part of the gateway, or one of the strong gateways, is to, relax that protector in order to actually open to see and be seen. Right? I think that's both ways. It's like you can see another, but if you're not open yourself, you're not letting yourself be seen, which is the other part of that equation. And so I think a lot of men crave that. Yeah, a lot of men crave that, but maybe don't have the skills or the tools to understand actually that. And so it sounds like that's maybe a big piece of the work that you invite men into.
I do. I mean, you described it so perfectly. In the simple thing that I'm trying to do with men is really just, I'm trying to help them come into contact with their feelings. It's very, very simple. I mean, it's not that simple because they've never done it. They disassociate, they compensate, they adapt, right? It's hard to get them to just sit present in their sadness or their fear or their longing, or in the places they got hurt, and just to be in that place and not have to do anything, defend themselves, solve the problem. It's really like embracing the inner feminine, that just be with, can you just be with yourself here? Because that creates presence, and presence is really the most powerful quality that you can have. And it's really all that your woman is longing for. She wants to feel you. And if you can't feel you, she can't feel you. And if she can't feel you, it's really hard for her to trust you, because you're not really all the way there. And so I think most women want to surrender in some way to the masculine and be in that dance. Maybe not every moment, but they want access to that energy and that dynamic. And if you're a man who can't come present with your emotions, it's really hard to achieve that. And it's vulnerable to do that, because you're risking being seen, and most men have shame about those places inside themselves. And so a lot of it is just like, this is normal. There's nothing wrong. This is just what it is to be human. And it's okay to be here. And of course, because you've seen it, whenever a guy really goes there in an authentic way, you see what happens with the other men. They're just drawn to that and supportive of that. And so that experience of being seen and received is deeply healing.
Beautiful. Well, in the last moments here, how about you share where guys can figure out what else you got to offer and where to find it?
Okay. Yeah. You can go to davidsutcliffe.com, my website. It's all there. Currently, I'm running a program, Reclaim Your Masculine Authority and Learn to Lead. But it's all the things that we talked about from my perspective. It's great. It's a great it's a great program. I'm really excited about it. And so if you're a dude and kind of resonating with my vibe and my perspective, check it out. And we'll set up a call and see if it's right for you. David,
well, it's good to get in the arena with you. Thanks for making time.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you giving me the time, the space, to explore some of these ideas and just, create the safety for me to just riff on some of these things that are, controversial.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Mythic Masculine. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family and anybody else you think would be interested in the subjects and the guests that I bring on my show. It really does help spread this through grassroots connection and recommendation. So thank you.